We have a status report on some key Canucks free agents, including Nikita Zadorov, whose contract status and speculation seems to be changing by the day. In preparation of worst case scenario, we take a look at 4 left-handed defensemen who would fit in perfectly with the Canucks as great replacements. But before we get into that, make sure to hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon so you don't miss any and all updates surrounding the Canucks this free agency. And with that, let's hop into the first topic of the day, which is Canucks free agent update. And we see here from Rick Dollywall, he's saying that it's still quiet on Zadorov and Joshua. Dollywall wonders if Tocchet is going to management and telling them they can't lose both guys. And if this is the case, I think it goes to show and prove that Tocchet truly is a player's coach, going to management and saying, hey, whatever it takes to keep these guys, let's make it happen. We'd hate to see him go to the guy like Joshua go to his old coach and Craig Berube back in Toronto of all teams. You'd hate to see him and Revo on the ice together. And with a guy like Zadorov, this is the defensive core, or the physical core, I should say, of this team. Joshua finished top 10 in the league in hits. I firmly believe had he not gotten hurt, he would have been number 1 in hits. He was just a wrecking ball on the ice, especially with him being a winger and being that front end physicality. And you have Zadorov on the back end. Had he played a full season in Vancouver, maybe he would have been in that top 10 conversation. Who knows? But I think losing these two guys are the physical core of your team. So if you lose those two guys, that's a big, big hole to fill, at least when we thought only Zadorov was going to be leaving. If you lose both those guys, that is going to be massive. But we had a second update come out from Elliot Friedman saying he thinks Lindholm is out. He thinks Zadorov is most likely out, but not ready to pronounce that one officially done yet. And that there's framework for a Myers deal. I think Lindholm being out is something that we all came to expect and are anticipating come July 1st. It's just a matter of it just happening because it hasn't reached there yet. And I think Lindholm has just priced himself out as far as the Canucks go. It isn't going to be something that they're going to make happen. As far as replacements for him, we have a separate video for that coming soon, so stay tuned for that. But with there being a framework for a Myers deal, that is reassuring, especially looking at if they don't bring Myers back, you're going to lose that entire right side of your defense because Hronek, he's going to be very expensive to bring back, even though he is one of the top defensemen in the league. We didn't see him show up in much in the playoffs, but that's a whole other issue. Ian Cole, who was a liability in the playoffs after a pretty solid season, he would be another guy that is testing free agency. So if you can keep one out of those 3, at least that's less damage control you have to do. But Zadorov, if you lose a guy like him in that third pairing as well as Cole, you have to completely have a new identity in that third defensive pairing. And that's going to be the main topic of this video, which is 4 potential Zadorov replacements. And the first of which being New Westminster native himself, Brendan Dillon, who had a solid season with the Winnipeg Jets this season. He's a 6'4", 220-pound, 33-year-old, 77 games, 8 goals, 12 assists, 20 points, and a plus 20 rating. I've always said it's the most underrated stat in hockey, especially when it's that high in the positives. He's making things happen for his teammates. He does have the second highest cap hit of these 4 candidates at $3.9 million. He does have a solid average time on ice at 18:44. So he is somebody that we've talked about at length a few times, or at least have mentioned a few times, that we'd like to see come to Vancouver because the hometown crowd would really rally around him and give him those cheers that we've seen guys like JT Miller get, PD, Shelobs, and more. I think they would really embrace him, and the organization would as well, having a guy from BC there. He's also flirted with the idea of it when he was on Donnie and Dolly's. When he was asked about it, he was kind of hinting towards that might be a possibility if so. And he's someone who is getting a lot of hits. He finished high up in hits this season as well, and he can fight. We saw him fight Evander Kane. So if he's able to play Evander Kane more this season and have more opportunities to fight him or other guys on the Oilers or within the division, that would be awesome to see. More fireworks, more tails and feathers ruffled by Brendan Dillon. I think that would be awesome, especially playing for his hometown Canucks. That would be amazing to see. And the second person on that list would be veteran Joel Edmondson. He does have a championship. He played for Berube, so he knows the winning mentality. He had a pretty weak season as far as points go, with splitting the 53 games between Washington and Toronto. 1 goal, 5 assists, 6 points, 1640 average ice time. He does have the second lowest cap hit at 3.5 million when looking at the people on this list. He does have a cup, so he does know what it takes to win. He has had that winning mentality instilled in him with Craig Berube. So if he goes and brings that over to Vancouver with a guy like Tocchet, I think Tocchet could really benefit, or Edmondson, I should say, could really benefit from a coach like Tocchet, who is very similar to Berube in some aspects. He's maybe not as intense as Berube, but Tocchet is that player's coach who will have the team rally behind him. He plays it cool. He doesn't get too hot-headed. So I think a guy like Edmondson would fit in very nicely and be good for growth for a guy like Quinn Hughes, where he's someone who is an up-and-coming captain who wants to win the cup one day, and I think Edmonton, having been there and done that, would go a long way of doing that. There is another cup winner on this list that we're going to get to in a second, but before we get to him, we could look at 30-year-old Mike Reilly, who was placed on waivers earlier this year by the Florida Panthers after just 2 games, playing 59 games with New York Islanders with 6 goals, 18 assists, 24 points, averaging 17 minutes and 9 seconds of time on ice, and in some of the playoff games, he was getting 20 minutes per game, so he was playing a lot and was a very important role on this Islanders team, who wasn't the greatest, but they did make the playoffs, and they made a little bit of a attempt at a run. But he would be someone who could come over to Vancouver and play a more important role. He does have the smallest cap hit on this list at $1 million. So I think he is somebody who he does bring a bit more experience. All these guys do bring a bit of experience on their end. And he is somebody who played an important role with New York, so he could come over and go from a very important, reliable role to a role where he would be on the third defensive pairing, still having to fill in some big shoes on Big Z, but he still would be able to get some points on the board, create opportunities for some guys, and I think he still would be an interesting appeal, at least for this Vancouver team. I think he does bring a lot of experience, like I said, and he has traveled the league. He's been through a few teams. He knows what it's like to go from different environments, so I think he's someone who could adapt to a city like Vancouver and still come at a relatively cheap price. But the fourth person we're getting to on this list is Alec Martinez. He's a 3-time cup winner. He's been there, done that. He is a veteran in every sense of the word. He does bring the highest cap hit with that at $5.25 million. In 55 games, he had 4 goals, 13 assists, 17 points, 1903 average ice time. But he is somebody that I really like out on this list. I know he does come at an expensive price tag, but it's something that maybe the Canucks could be able to make happen. I don't know. But Alec Martinez is somebody that is very appealing to me. He did win 2 cups early on in his career and then just won another one with Vegas. So, like I said, he's been there, he's done that, he's bought the t-shirt, but he does want to go back. And I think going back with a team like Vancouver would be very interesting. They are a very young and dynamic team where he could definitely add, like Edmondson would add some veteran knowledge. I think he adds even more. So that comes maybe with the price tag as well. But it would be interesting to see how he would fit on this team. I think he's someone who would fit pretty well on this team. It would be nice to see him and Quinn Hughes together, and maybe not on the same line, obviously, because they're both on the left side, but to see them in their chemistry, I think, as far as mentor and pupil, I think that would go a long way for Quinn Hughes' development. So these are all guys, these 4 guys are ones that bring something different to Vancouver. We have physicality, we have finesse, we have leadership, we have experience. We have so many different things where the main person who could benefit from that is Quinn Hughes, but also the rest of the team around him and this captain. So I think these are 4 guys who are very interesting names to look at going forward, and ones that fans maybe should be rooting for Vancouver to go after should they unfortunately not be able to sign Zadorov. However, that's all we have for this topic. But with that, let's get into everyone's favorite topic, which is comment of the day. And we see here from Tiny1010, out of curiosity, how did you guys become fans of the Canucks if you were born on the other side of the country? And I can't speak for Mark personally, but my own personal story, I'm from Windsor, Ontario. Speaking from the Vancouver Canucks, they have 2 Windsor alumni there with Ed Jovanovski and Kyle Wellwood. Kyle Wellwood also played for the St. John's Maple Leafs, so where Mark is from, he played for his AHL team when they were around, and he played for many years in Vancouver, a few years at least in Vancouver, sorry. And Ed Jovanovski as well, being from Windsor, that was a nice physical presence to have out there on the ice. He played for Florida as well. And growing up, I always admired Marcus Naslund, Trevor Linden, Roberto Luongo, Todd Bertuzzi, all those guys, the West Coast Express offense. Those guys were always fun to watch, even from all the way in Ontario. I did grow up as a Habs fan, being in a French family, but as the years have gone on, I've always rooted more and more for the Canucks. My dad actually used to work in Vancouver, so I would always go out there. If it was on off season, we would at least walk by the arena, and he would say all the time how wherever he was at, he would see like Bo Horvat, Brock Boeser. So you would see all these guys coming in and out, and every time I would go out there, I became more and more and more of a fan of the Canucks as the years went on, and that's going back like almost 10 years ago now. But yeah, it's just been awesome to see the Canucks. And also there's the Sedins era, there's Ryan Kessler, Kevin Bieksa, all those guys. Seeing all those guys play for the Canucks as a kid and growing up as a teenager into a young adult, it just really helped form my love of the Canucks as well. And seeing how they've just been a team that has gone through ups and downs through literally fires in the riots in Vancouver in 2011 after losing to Boston, sadly. I remember watching that as a kid and it was just insane. So there was a lot of reasons to root for the Canucks. They're a team that have been kind of like Canada's underdog team in a sense. They're the furthest away from everybody, which is the main hub of Ontario. And they're the ones that could potentially make the biggest splash next season. I think they're a team that has the depth to go on a massive run. And I think it's going to be awesome to be covering them next season. It's been a blast covering them thus far. Can't wait to bring you guys more amazing content going forward. But that's going to do it for this episode of Canucks Digest. Make sure to click that like button, subscribe, share with your friends. Let us know how he did in the comments. Let us know your thoughts on what replacements you would like to see for Big Z. But that's going to do it for this episode. I've been your host, Griffin.